Chase Briscoe will officially join Joe Gibbs Racing in 2025, and Josh Berry could be joining the Wood Brothers in 2025. What's going on, guys? It's Daniel, and welcome back to the video. We got some NASCAR and other motorsports stories discussed here today on the channel. Let's go ahead and just jump straight on those really quickly. First, going to take a look at a ton of paint schemes that have been revealed over the course of the last couple days. Let's go ahead and just jump straight into them. The first paint scheme we're taking a look at is Bailey Currey's 2024 Detroit Mass Owl Technology scheme that we'll see in multiple races in 2024. Paint scheme's alright in my opinion. Colors look decent. Looking forward to seeing on the racetrack this weekend and a couple other races throughout the 2024 season. The next paint scheme we're taking a look at is Ryan Ellis's 2024 Classic Collisions Nashville scheme that we'll see this weekend at Nashville. Very solid looking paint scheme in my opinion. Love the colors. Alf Prime always does a great job. Looking forward to seeing on the racetrack this weekend. The next paint scheme we're taking a look at is Corey LaJoie's 2024 Garner Trucking scheme that we'll see this weekend and another race later this season. Solid looking paint scheme in my opinion. Like the black and the red. Like the colors overall. Looking forward to seeing on the racetrack this weekend at Nashville. The next paint scheme we're taking a look at is Preston Parta's 2024 Chintour scheme that we'll see at the Chicago Street Course next week. Solid looking colors in my opinion. Like all of them. They did a really good job on it. Looking forward to seeing on the racetrack at Chicago. Next paint scheme we're taking a look at is Anthony Alfredo's 2024 Dude Wives Minchill scheme that we'll see this weekend at Nashville. I like this a lot. I've been a big fan of the Dude Wife schemes. I like they're changing up this weekend. Looking forward to seeing on the racetrack at Nashville. The next paint scheme we're taking a look at is Ricky Stenhouse Jr.'s 2024 Artesmo Hawaiian scheme that we're going to see this weekend at Nashville. Not as big a fan of this scheme. I love they're bringing in a new Kroger brand like Artesmo. I'm not a big fan of this scheme, though. Hopefully Stenhouse can have a good run in this scheme. The next paint scheme we're taking a look at is Chris Bell's 2024 DeWalt Concrete Solutions scheme that we're going to see this weekend at Nashville. Not much has changed with the normal DeWalt scheme except Concrete Solutions coming in. I've been a big fan of this DeWalt scheme though. Looking forward to seeing on the racetrack this weekend at Nashville. The next paint scheme we're taking a look at is Chandler Smith's 2024 Barger Precast scheme that we'll see this weekend at Nashville. The scheme's okay, in my opinion. Really cool to see that Chandler Smith does have a new sponsor. I think it's decent looking. Looking forward to seeing on the racetrack at Nashville. Next paint scheme we're taking a look at is Ross Chastain's 2024 Busch Light Country scheme that we're going to see this weekend at Nashville. I like this paint scheme a lot. I love the colors of the Kyle Sykes. Once again, nailing it. Trackhouse always killing it. I'm absolutely looking forward to seeing on the racetrack this weekend at Nashville Super Speedway. The next paint scheme we're taking a look at is Jesse Love's 2024 C4 scheme that we're going to see this weekend at Nashville. Really cool to see C4 joining Jesse Love this season. I like the sponsorship a lot, and it's really exciting to see that he has a new sponsor, though they've been working with him in the past. Glad to see he does have a new paint scheme for this weekend. Next paint scheme we're taking a look at is Bubba Wallace's 2024 Columbia Luke Combs scheme that we're going to see this weekend at Nashville. I like this a lot. Like the colors on it. I think 2311 Racing did a pretty good job on this paint scheme, and cool to see that Bubba Wallace, in fact, does have a new sponsor for this weekend. The next paint scheme we're taking a look at is Zane Smith's 2024 Jockey Outdoors Luke Bryan scheme that we'll see this weekend at Nashville Super Speedway. I like this a lot. I like the colors. I think did a fantastic job on it, that being Trackhouse inspired. It looks pretty excellent. Looking forward to seeing it on the racetrack. And the final paint scheme we're taking a look at is Daniel Suarez's 2024 Tootsie scheme that we're going to see this weekend at Nashville. A little bit different than the other Tootsie schemes, but I really like the pink. I think the Trackhouse knocked it out of the park for this weekend. I think this looks excellent. I think it absolutely looks amazing, and I'm definitely looking forward to seeing on the racetrack because I think it looks absolutely great overall, to be honest with you. And now we're going to ahead and jump on to the next story of today's episode as we're talking about Rush Truck Centers. As it was announced yesterday that Rush Truck Centers will sponsor Clint Bowyer in his return to the Truck Series this weekend at Nashville Super Speedway. Rush Truck Centers had a loyal ambassadorship with Clint Bowyer over the course of the last few years, and they were a sponsor of Clint Bowyer from, I believe, 2017 up until he retired at the end of 2020. And they're bringing the classic look back. I think this looks absolutely excellent, to be honest. I think they nailed this one out of the park. Clint Bowyer's going to have a really good chance and opportunity to win this weekend. I think he's going to do excellent. And once again, looking forward to seeing him get the chance and opportunity to make his return. I think his paint scheme looks really great overall. Glad to see Rush Truck Centers will be sponsoring him at Nashville Super Speedway. And now we're going ahead, jump on to the next story of today's episode as we're talking about National Super Speedway. As it was reported by Bob Pockers yesterday that the inside wall that Ryan Blaney hit last year will have a tire pack in front of it. Remember last year, National Super Speedway, Ryan Blaney hit the inside wall very, very hard. I think it was 65 or 70 G's is what he said in the media center the next week, I think at the Chicago Street Course, and he was not very happy about that situation. Obviously, Ryan Blaney, hit that wall very hard, and there was a lot of talk and conversation that there needs to be a safer barrier in that area. At least there's going to be some sort of tire pack, but I feel like they probably should develop a safer barrier there in the future, because especially with this being a NASCAR, an SMI-owned track, every track should have safer barrier all around it at the bottom and the top of the track. But at least they've come up with some sort of solution to this problem, because believe me, at least this is a start to figuring out the problem. But at the same token, at the same time, I really hope in the not so distant future that we do see them go ahead and build a safer barrier in that area. I get it costs money, but they need to find a way to build a safer barrier in that area. But as of right now, to build a tire pack, I do eventually expect them, though, to have some sort of safer barrier in that area in the future, especially since National likely will be back on the schedule in 2025. And now we're going ahead and jump on to the next story of today's episode as we're talking about Chase Elliott. As it was reported by Trey Ryan that Chase Elliott has finished in the top 20 in the first 18 points-paying races in 2024. This is the first time since 1991 that has happened. That is when Ricky Rudd drove for Hendrick Motorsports and the number 5 organization. And according to Trey Ryan, this is only the 4th time in the modern era of NASCAR that this has happened. It has been very impressive to watch Chase Elliott be as successful as he's been this season. He has only had one, in fact, I think he's only had 2 finishes outside of the top 15 the whole entire season. It's been very impressive. His average finish is like a 9.2 or 9.3. It's like Matt Kenseth level numbers, and he's been as consistent and more consistent than any driver in the field. I expect Chase Elliott to win more races, and I think he's going to get more top 10s, and I think he's going to continue finishing in top 20 every race. We're going a really good track for Chase. I think he's going to have a good chance to win this weekend in Nashville, and I think that average finish will continue to go down. So I've been really impressed with Chase. He's been doing an excellent job this year, and it's really impressive to see Chase Elliott finish in the top 20 in the first 18 races. The level is absolutely incredible. Congrats to Chase on continuing to be very successful this season. And now we're going ahead and jump on to the next story of today's episode as we're talking about Dale Jr. As it was announced on Monday morning that Dale Jr. will be racing at Langley Speedway at the NASCAR Weekly Series Advanced Auto Parts Series at Langley on July 20th. Dale Jr. obviously been doing a lot of late model racing as of late. We do know he's going to be running an Xfinity Series race at Briscoe, which could be his final Xfinity Series race he runs as he'll turn 50 in October. But Dale Jr. obviously has been running a lot of late model races because he has had a little more time off of not working with NASCAR and NBC, though he will be going to Amazon and TNT starting next year, so he probably won't have as much time to go out and race. I think Dale Jr.'s got a really good chance to win at Langley. He'll be driving for his own organization, Junior Motorsports, which of course he owns. I think Dale Jr. is going to have a really solid chance and a strong opportunity to go out there and win at Langley Speedway. I think he'll do a very excellent and great job. Good to see that he will be driving at Langley Speedway in his own car later this season. And now we're going ahead and jump on to the next story of today's episode as we're talking about Mike Helman Jr. As it was announced by Freedom Racing Enterprises that Mike Helman Jr. will begin crew chiefing for Spencer Boyd starting this weekend at National Super Speedway. Jeff Hammond had been the intern crew chief for the whole entire season. Greg Eli was the original crew chief for the team. I think he's moved to more of a competition role, if I remember correctly, or moved to another organization. But now we're going to see Mike Helman Jr. take over for Jeff Hammond. Mike Helman Jr., of course, a champion of the NASCAR Truck Series, won 2 championships with Top 09, and it's been a little bit of a rocky start so far this season with Nice Motorsports. And I wonder who the new crew chief is going to be for Bailey Curry going forward, because Bailey Curry and Mike Helman Jr. thought were really going to gel together well, and it's really not worked well for the team so far this year. Now, is this going to fix the issues of Freedom Racing Enterprises? No, I'm going to be real and honest here. I feel like they need to get a new driver in that truck. There's no disrespect Spencer Boyd, but Spencer Boyd, I feel like, has been regressing over the last 2 years, and his performance has not gotten a lot better. They just have not had the pace and speed so far this year, and they absolutely been struggling. So I really hope they find a new driver to go in there, but I'm glad to see they're bringing someone in on the crew chiefing side of things who I truly believe is going to help that program. So I'm glad to see Mike Helman Jr. get the chance and opportunity, and I really hope he can make the best of it with the organization starting at National Super Speedway. And now we're going to head on to the next story of today's episode as we're talking about DJ Powell. As it was announced yesterday that DJ Powell has been suspended for the NASCAR Xfinity Series race at National Superspeedway. Why was he suspended? Well, there was an improperly installed rear axle on the car. DJ Powell, for those who don't know, is the current car chief of the number 42 car for Young's Motorsports. And if you watched the NASCAR Xfinity Series race, you saw that 42 car basically spinning out of nowhere, which was a major shock for me and a lot of people that were watching the race. Obviously, that's unacceptable. You can't get that stuff installed. I know sometimes we make mistakes, but this is something that should have been fixed. Again, this is a first-year team, so I get understand. I can't remember who's taking over in replacement for this weekend, but at same token, same time, this is something that absolutely needs to be fixed going forward. I'm not surprised or shocked to see this. It's a little surprising in a sense too, but at the same token, same time, I'm really not shocked to see this overall. To be honest with you, I really hope they get this resolved and straight out going forward. And now we're going to head on to the next story of today's episode as we're talking about Chad Finch. As it was announced on Tuesday, that Chad Finch will be driving the 66 for MBM Motorsports this weekend at National Superspeedway in the Cup Series. He's also going to be driving a 14 car for SS Greenlight Racing in the Xfinity Series, meaning he'll be doing double duty, I believe, for the first time in his career. Chad Finch has made select starts in the NASCAR Xfinity Series this year. I think he's made a start or two in the Truck Series, and this will be, I think, his second Cup start of 2024. Chad Finch, I think, is a pretty underrated driver. He's had some solid performances with the team and the organization in the past, and I think Chad Finch is going to have a solid chance and opportunity to be up front competing. Which I don't know if, at least for the Xfinity, he might do better. But in the Cup Series, we haven't really seen the pace and speed of the 66 car. So I'm not sure if he's going to have a chance and opportunity to go out there and do well. We know there's only one or two extra cars showing up. We know that Corey Himes driving the 50 this weekend, which we're going to talk about here in just a second. But we're going to see Chad Finch get the chance and opportunity to drive. I really hope he can make the best of it this week. And my expectation is they're going to struggle, unfortunately. But I think it's a good opportunity. Hope he can make the best of it with this team this weekend at National Superspeedway. And now we're going ahead on to the next story of today's episode as we're talking about BJ McLoud. As it was announced this morning that BJ McLoud will be driving a 13 for MBM Motorsports later this year in the NASCAR Xfinity Series at Indianapolis Motor Speedway with Falling in Reverse as the sponsor. Falling in Reverse is one of the biggest rock bands out there currently at the moment, so this is absolutely huge. There's been rumors and speculation that they were going to be coming to NASCAR and they were going to be working with BJ McLeod. It's really awesome to see BJ back in the NASCAR world. Obviously, he's been running part-time in the Cup Series with his own organization, Live Fast Motorsports, and I also think he's made some select starts with MBM Motorsports in the past as well. This car likely will have to qualify its way in because I do expect that there is going to be more than 40 cars showing up. I think there's a couple Cup teams that are going to be there, and we know the 88 car for Junior Motorsports is also showing up as well for Carson quaffle. We're going to talk about it here in just a little bit. But I think it's really exciting to see that we're going to see MBM Motorsports back with two cars because I do expect the 66 car to show up as well. I'm glad to see you're bringing in Falling in Reverse, and I think it's really excellent that BJ McLeod is back in the sport, and glad to see he'll be driving a 13 for MBM Motorsports at Indianapolis. And now we're going ahead on to the next story of today's episode as we're talking about Joseph Newgarden. As it was announced yesterday afternoon that Joseph Newgarden has been named the honorary official for the Ally 400. Joseph Newgarden, the two-time Indianapolis 500 winner, has expressed interest in racing in NASCAR. And this is going to be his first tip and goes in NASCAR in some sort of capacity, I believe since 2017 or 2018, when he actually did a test lap at the Charlotte Roval, because there were rumors, speculation back then that IndyCar was going to be racing at the Charlotte Roval at the time, but obviously IndyCar has not raced since around 1997 or 1998. For Joseph Newgarden, this obviously is also his hometown track. He's from the Hendersonville area out near Nashville. So it's not surprising to see him get the chance and opportunity to be out there. And remember, the IndyCar Series is also returning to Nashville Superspeedway later this year. They were going to be racing at the Nashville Street Circuit, but we know that they're going to be racing there at Nashville for the season finale for the Music City Grand Prix. It's really cool to see Joseph Newgarden get the chance and opportunity to be at the Ally 400, and I think he will do an excellent job being an official, and I would not be surprised or shocked if currently he's working on the opportunity race in NASCAR. He's been interested in wanting to do the double. Glad to see, though, Joseph Newgarden will be at the Ally 400 later this season. And now we're going ahead, jump on to the next story of today's episode as we're talking about the money team. As they announced last night that the money team is unknown when they are going to return to the NASCAR Cup Series. The money team has made select starts so far in 2024. They've only made 1 or 2 starts actually under the Team Ambervet group, and Ty Dillon was the driver. They were planning to run around 6 to 8 races this year in 2024, but obviously that really did not end up happening, unfortunately, for the team. And I don't know how many races they're going to run. Obviously, the 50 car has really not been available much this year. They did run that for Ty Dillon, but they also had given up the 50 for a couple races. Remember, Corey Heim is making his Cup Series debut in that 50 car. We're not expecting that number to be moved next year if 2311 Racing does, in fact, go ahead and expand. But as for the money team, I think they are going to rebrand to that Team Ambervet organization, and I do think that they're going to eventually hire some people to try to go full-time because they've expressed interest in the past of looking to go full-time. This organization, of course, is a former Starcom Racing organization, so I do expect that they eventually are going to like to go full-time in the future, but as of right now, I don't think that's going to end up happening. So, really interesting to see the money team's not sure when they're going to come back. I predict they're going to try to come back for the Breakout 400. That's when I think their next opportunity could end up coming true. I don't know at this point. But nonetheless, the money team right now is not going to come back. I would say maybe they'll get someone like Matt DiBenedetto or Jeffrey Earnhardt in the future to get a chance to drive for this team. So I've speculated that for years. We'll see if that ends up happening, or if they get Carl Edwards. Who knows at this point. But at the same token, same time, the money team will not be returning, at least at this current moment and point. And now we're going ahead, jump on to the next story of today's episode as we're talking about Carson Quaffle. As it was announced yesterday that Carson Quaffle will be driving the 88 for Junior Motorsports this weekend at National Super Speedway. This race was not originally on Carson Quaffle's schedule. He had Indianapolis on his schedule. I think he had Homestead near the end of the season on his schedule, remember correctly. And I believe Phoenix and Martinsville were also on his schedule as well. The reason Carson Quaffle is getting another start at it is a couple reasons. One, Carson Quaffle has been extremely impressive so far in 2024 in the select starts that he has ran. He finished in the top 5 this past weekend at New Hampshire, and he also has been very much up front on a consistent basis with this team. I think he's finished in the top 5 in 3 of the 4 races he ran. He had arguably the fastest car at Martinsville. He probably should have won Dover, came close to winning there. And he did have one not great race at Darlington, but I still think he almost finished inside the top 10 in that race. The other reason why I think he's getting this added start is because of the fact that they're looking to potentially put him in that car full-time next year. I think if you're a driver like Brandon Jones or Sammy Smith, yes, they do bring sponsorship to the table, but if you probably are sweating a little bit right now, especially with so many drivers in the lower series looking to move up. People like Christian Eckes. We know Christian Eckes is looking to move up in 2025 to one of the upper series. Roger Krupp, we know they're looking at the Hendrick program right now, but I think he could also be a candidate for Junior Motorsports next season. And Brandon Jones, like I said, has been struggling immensely. And I think Carson Quaffle, put him that 9 car next year, I truly do believe that Carson Quaffle is going to take that car to the next level. So it's going to be very interesting to see what happens in regards to Carson Quaffle and how he's going to end up doing this weekend. I think he's got a good chance to win the race, in all honesty. He's been extremely impressive. It's really exciting stuff for him. And once again, I'm very happy and glad to see that Carson Quaffle will get the chance and opportunity to drive for this team. So I think he's got a great opportunity and chance here to be very, very competitive this weekend at Nashville. I think he'll do very, very good and well this weekend at National Super Speedway. And now we're going ahead, jump on to the next story of today's episode as we're talking about Kyle Busch and Kyle Larson. Now, Kevin Harvick was speaking on his podcast, the Happy Hour podcast that he does, and was speaking about the Haas Factory organization. He was really shocked and doesn't really know what's going on over there. But one very interesting detail he revealed on the Happy Hour podcast is the fact that Stewart Haas Racing could have not only gotten Kyle Larson, but could have also gotten Kyle Busch. This does not surprise or shock me, at least on the Kyle Larson side. We know Tony was really pushing to get Kyle Larson back in 2020. But unfortunately, the reason that Kyle Larson did not end up going over to Stewart Haas Racing is because Ford, unfortunately, denied that opportunity from happening. If Kyle Larson had gone to Stewart Haas Racing and driven for them, I don't think he'd be as successful as he ended up being at Hendrick Motorsports, but I do think that they would have been at least somewhat successful, and I think Kyle Larson would have gone on to win races. But the Kyle Busch one is very interesting. We know there was rumors and speculation that Kyle Busch had been talking to Stewart Haas Racing about going there in 2023. And I truly do believe that had he had both Kyle Larson and Kyle Busch and Kevin Harvick and Chase Briscoe on the same team in 2023, I actually think that they all would have been very, very successful. I don't think Kyle Busch would have been in the same position he is in currently at the moment, and I think the team would have been somewhat very, very successful. So I wish that this would have happened, because I do think, like I said, all 4 drivers at his team would have been good. You have 4 of the top 15 drivers currently in the Cup Series at the moment at the time last year. Kevin Harvick, even though he struggled at points, he would have done great. And I don't think Stewart-Haas Racing would have shut down. They would have still had sponsorship coming in. Kyle Busch probably would have brought some sponsors in. And I think the team would be in a much better position. Now, eventually, I think SHR would have shut down, because I think all 4 drivers would have moved on to different teams and different organizations. But I don't think, with Eric Almirola coming back in 2023, I think that's why Kyle Busch, unfortunately, did not end up going there. But there was a lot of talk, like I said, that Kyle Busch was going to go there. There's also a lot of talk that Kyle Busch was going to go to Colleague Racing at one point, and then eventually settled with RCR. There was talk of him going to 2311, and obviously, like I said, that did not end up happening. And Kyle Busch now at RCR, and unfortunately is struggling quite a bit. So, though, it's very interesting to look at for sure that both those guys could have absolutely ended up at Stewart-Haas Racing, and I think SHR would have definitely been in a much better situation. They could have gone after something like a Matt DiBenedetto and Zane Smith as well. Obviously, that did not end up happening, and there were other drivers they were looking at as well, like a Michael McDowell, and that did not end up happening. But now Stewart-Haas Racing shut down, and they're basically going to be going to this Haas factory team starting in 2025. And now we're going ahead and jump on to the next story of today's episode, as we're talking about Andy Petri. As it was shockingly announced last night that Andy Petri has announced retirement from RCR and being the competition director effective immediately. Keith Rodden is going to be the interim content director until they can get someone new in there for 2025. This is absolutely a shock. Andy Petri has been at Richard Childress Racing for many years and returned to RCR, I think, back in 2019 or 2020. And for quite a bit of time when he was over at RCR, especially in 2022, they were extremely successful. Tyler Reddick got 3 victories, and they were doing very, very well over there. 2023 also started off very well, at least for Kyle Busch, when he joined Richard Childress Racing, and he got 3 wins. But in recent years, Richard Childress Racing has really taken a major step backwards, especially this season. Kyle Busch is currently 17th in the regular season standings and is currently 19th on the playoff grid, 45 or 47 points below the cutoff line. Austin Dillon is 31st in the points. RCR right now is not in a very good position. And I think the reason that this move is happening is so they can do some major reshuffling. We know there's a lot of people from SHR that teams like RCR are looking at for 2025, like a Ronnie Childress perhaps, which if they brought Ronnie Childress in to be the competition director, I think it'd be great, but I don't think Ronnie Childress is going to go there. They're making these moves to fix a lot of the problems over at RCR. They should be performing a lot better. Again, last year to start off, Kyle Busch had 3 wins, and at this point last year, after race 18, Kyle Busch was still in the top 10 in the standings. He is on the verge of being outside the top 20. He is having his worst career Cup Series season, even worse than his rookie year. And I think that's why this move is happening in the first place, because they have to make some sort of changes over there. That being said, with Keith Rodden going in, I really don't expect much improvement. No disrespect to Keith Rodden. Keith Rodden, in my opinion, is probably one of the worst crew chiefs I have ever seen. He struggled with Austin Dillon. He struggled with Casey Kane. He struggled with Jamie McMurray. And he really has never won. He only won 1 race back in 2017 at the Briscoe 400. And a lot of big-name drivers, unfortunately, got out of the race because of wrecks and other things and engine failures. Were caught up in wrecks and incidents like Kyle Busch and Mark Truex Jr. ended up wrecking each other in that race. I really don't think that Keith Rodden is going to fix the problems. They need to make some sort of change, though, and I really hope that this change with them both, with Andy Petri retiring, I really hope they can start making some big executive moves. There's been rumors, once again, that Austin Dillon could retire. I know that he did sign a multi-year extension with the team, but there have begun to be rumors that Austin Dillon, they need someone younger in there, and I think if Austin Dillon was to actually retire, I think it would really benefit the team, in my honest opinion. And now we're going ahead, jump on to the next story of today's episode as we're talking about the 2025 NASCAR schedule. Now, we kind of touched on this on the channel a couple days ago, but Jordan Bianchi released an official article surrounding the 2025 NASCAR schedule. This talks about the playoffs a bit, and this also talks about some other things that are notable as well. Let's begin by talking about the playoff rumors because we kind of touched on this on the channel, and he revealed this on the Teardown on Sunday. But according to him, 3 tracks are going to be going out of the playoffs and 3 tracks are going into the playoffs. We already knew that Darlington was going to be going in the playoffs or back in the playoffs in 2025. The reason it was originally taken out of the playoffs was because of the Olympics. The Olympic schedule messed everything up. That's why it was brought out of the playoffs to be the regular season finale. The track that it's replacing is Atlanta Motor Speedway. Atlanta, we already knew was going to be opening up the TNT portion of the season on Saturday night on June 28th. That was already confirmed. We knew Atlanta was going to be opening up TNT. I've got no problem with that. There will be only one drafting track in the playoffs, according to Jordan Bianchi. So what are the other 2 tracks that are going out? Well, according to Jordan Bianchi, the other 2 tracks that are going out are Watkins Glen and Homestead Miami Speedway. The 2 tracks that are going in, according to Jordan, are New Hampshire and Gateway. Let's begin by talking about Homestead and Watkins Glen. Watkins Glen, I'm not surprised by. I think they only wanted one road course on the schedule. According to Jordan, in his article, the Charlotte Roval is coming back next year, which is a little skeptical to me. I'm not a big fan of the Charlotte Roval. I think we should be running the Charlotte Oval personally during the fall. I don't think the Charlotte Roval's put on great racing. I know they just changed the layout as of recently to try to fix the racing, but I really don't know if that's going to fix the racing. Watkins Glen being taken out, however, isn't a shock or surprise to me. It also got put in the playoffs because of the Olympic break. I think Watkins Glen being during the summer actually makes a lot of sense. I know the next-gen car also hasn't raced great at the track, so it really does make a lot of sense. Homestead, I am a little disappointed about. I'm not going to lie, because Homestead's been part of the end of the season really since the track opened up many years ago. And it is a shame to see that it's not going to be in the playoffs most likely in 2025. But there are a couple reasons why I think it's being taken out. Jordan notes in the article that they wanted a warm weather date in the early portion of the year. According to him, it sounds like it's going to be in the middle of March, which I question a little bit. But I do have a little bit of a theory around Homestead. I think the reason they're taking it out is so that they can get the season finale. We know they're pushing heavily to get the season finale once again in 2026. If you have the race a little earlier in the year, you can have time for renovations. So I'm not really a big fan of taking it out because I think there needs to be another mile and a half in the playoffs personally. But if it is becoming a season finale in the future for renovations, fine. That's understandable. As for the 2 going in, I actually like Gateway going in the playoffs, and there's a big reason why Gateway's going in. Gateway is going in because the IndyCar race got moved to June 15th, and he notes that in the article as well. They're moving that race to June 15th. So they had to move the NASCAR race around, so they had to find a place to put it in, which it makes a lot of sense to move it to the playoffs, and I think it's going to open up the round of 12 most likely. Gateway also has attracted a huge crowd. They have 57,000 seats at the track, and I do think they're going to eventually add more seats in the future. New Hampshire is the one I'm questioning a bit. I get why, because of the weather issues, and historically outside of the 2002 race that Ryan Newman won, I do think that basically is a little questionable to move it to the playoffs. I think New Hampshire is an okay track, but it hasn't produced the greatest racing in the world, and you're adding way too many flat tracks in the playoffs as well, because you're going to have Phoenix, you're going to have Gateway, you're going to have New Hampshire, you're going to have other flat tracks in the playoffs as well. You're going to have a lot of tracks that have been really great with the next-gen car, so I question that move. Some other things to note with the schedule. Bowman Gray is likely going to be the clash. We've known it's been rumored for a while that it was likely going to be the clash for 2025, and it's expected to be confirmed in the coming weeks. Bowman Gray, a little bit questionable to have it during the winter time. Again, they're probably going to be able to fill it up. Hopefully the weather can be warmer at that time, but I feel like it would have worked a lot better as an all-star race than the clash. There was talk about going to Daytona as well, but speaking of Daytona, that will be the regular season finale once again in 2025. The final thing that he noted was about Mexico City and Montreal. NASCAR is negotiating with both cities currently at the moment to host an international date. It sounds like it's leaning toward Mexico City, replacing the Richmond Spring Day, and I think Mexico City will end up being on the schedule. NASCAR used to race at the Autodromo Hernando Rodriguez track, which is where I think it's going to end up going in 2025. Other than that, there's some other really interesting things to note about the schedule. It's unknown when the schedule is going to release. I've heard it could release at the end of the month, but we keep pushing it farther and farther back, and we're getting now in the later portion of the year. I'm actually thinking it might not come out till after we get to the break, which would make a lot of sense. Maybe do it during the break when we have the Olympics coming, which is a few weeks from now. So maybe that's when they're going to release it, but I really hope they can release the schedule here very, very soon. We'll have to wait and see what happens in regards to the rest of the schedule, but there's some interesting notes for the schedule for 2025. And now we're going ahead, jump on to the first of two major stories in today's episode as we're talking about NASCAR silly season once again. Now, obviously, we're going to talk about the Chase Briscoe news here in just a little bit, but there's some other interesting notes in regards to NASCAR silly season going around. We kind of touched on this on the channel earlier this weekend, but it was reported by Adam Stern that Josh Berry could potentially be headed to the Wood Brothers in 2025. Obviously, currently Harrison Burton drives for that organization at the moment, but we know that Harrison Burton has been struggling immensely. And there's talk that both Josh Berry and Rodney Childers could end up both going to the Wood Brothers next season. I think the Wood Brothers would be a really good move for Josh Berry. He's also been linked to Front Row Motorsports, which is expected to make some announcements here in the not-so-distant future. But Josh Berry going to the Wood Brothers would definitely be very interesting. I think that car is a lot more capable than what we've been seeing from Harrison Burton. I'm going to be real and honest. Matt DiBenedetto made the playoffs in 2020 in that ride. Ryan Blaney made the round of 8 and nearly made the championship 4 in that seat. I think that car is a lot more capable than what Harrison Burton has been showing, but I don't think Harrison Burton is completely screwed. But Josh Berry with the Wood Brothers would be a very interesting move, and I think he'd be extremely successful in that seat. As for Noah Gragson has been linked to multiple different seats for 2025. We know he's been linked to Rich Schultz Racing. We talked about the fact that we know Kyle Busch is coming back to RCR next season, though there have been rumors he may be one out at this point. And also we know that Austin Dillon is expected to return, but there's been rumors from a designer named Jay Cowles designed multiple cars in the Cup Series that Austin Dillon could actually be just retiring altogether despite signing that 3-year extension and going to competition role. Noah Gragson could end up replacing Austin Dillon next season. Noah Gragson also could go to Front Row Motorsports and join them. I think that'd be a really good move for Noah Gragson's career as well. Front Row is a top-tier team, and Noah Gragson has been getting the best out of equipment. Bubba Wallace, according to reports, is expected to sign a multi-year contract extension with 23XI Racing. While it's unknown how long the contract is going to be, he deserved the extension in my opinion, and I think he ends up going there. He could have a new teammate next year as well. Corey Heim and Riley Herbst are the two lead candidates for that third 23XI Racing seat. I would personally choose Corey Heim over Riley Herbst, but Riley Herbst does bring a lot of funding, and there's been rumors that Riley's father in that company have bought that charter up, and that's why Riley Herbst is linked to the 23XI Racing seat. Again, I don't think Riley Herbst is going to set the world on fire 23XI if he goes there, and Corey Heim has won 4 races, and I think he's going to win this weekend in Nashville, by the way, in the Truck Series. I think that's who should end up going there. Moving on to Trackhouse Racing. They've got a pretty big dilemma currently at the moment to figure out right now. They have to figure out if they're going to choose Shane Van Gisbergen or Zane Smith. I think it's going to be SVG who's going to get the third Cup Series car. Shane Van Gisbergen has absolutely been heavily linked to a third full-time seat for Trackhouse Racing for the 2025 calendar year, and I do expect he's going to get the seat because he's been doing very well this year in the NASCAR Xfinity Series. 2 wins so far this year, 4 top 10s, and has been consistently inside the top 20 on most weeks. Outside of Iowa, where he crashed out, he's generally been up front on a week-by-week basis and getting better every single race. He had a great run going last week in New Hampshire, could have gotten the top 15, got some damage, and fell back a bit. I look at Nashville being a great track for him, and I think he's going to have a good chance to be competitive there, and I do think that SVG will be full-time in the Cup Series with sponsorship from WeatherTech and Red Bull as well. And Zane Smith, I think he goes either to Kaulig or goes back to Front Row. I think Zane Smith will likely be out, unfortunately, at the end of the season and moving to another organization, unfortunately. As for Junior Motorsports, we do know that they're not expecting to move up to the Cup Series next year. We know there were talks about it maybe going part-time. I think there's a chance they could go Cup Racing, at least on a part-time basis, but they're not going to be acquiring a charter from Stewart-Haas Racing. Speaking of those charters, 23XI and Trackhouse are likely going to acquire those 2 charters. We know RCR and RFK Racing have been interested in getting a charter for next year, but I don't think that is going to end up happening. And finally, let's talk about the Haas factory team. The Haas factory team, we know is going to be joining the Cup Series next year in 2025. The big question is going to be who's going to be driving in their Cup Series program and also their Xfinity Series program. Ryan Preece has been linked to their Xfinity Series program for 2025. He says he could be going to the Xfinity Series next year. There's been multiple rumors he's been linked there. I think he goes to the Haas factory team next year. It would make a lot of sense. He's very talented. I know he's kind of struggled so far this year in the NASCAR Cup Series, but I think he'd be a really great asset in Canada for the Haas factory team next season. Cole Custer has been linked to the Haas factory team, the full-time Cup car. He's also been linked to Front Row Motorsports for next season, but I actually do think that Cole Custer could 100% end up over next year at their Cup program. The number has been unclear. I think they actually go with the 00. That's a number that Haas used to use back in the day, so I think that's where he likely will end up in 2025. The other ride is linked between Harrison Burton and Hailie Deegan potentially. Yes, Hailie Deegan's been linked to the Haas factory team for next year, which again, Hailie Deegan, as much as she's been struggling, I think she needs a better atmosphere. I don't think AM Racing is a great team personally, though Brett Moffitt did a lot better, so what do I know at this point? But I think that Hailie Deegan could go there, but also Harrison Burton's been linked. He's bringing sponsorship and funding to the table. It's going to be very interesting to see how the rest of silly season plays out for 2025, but I do expect a lot of major and big moves coming in the not-so-distant future with the rest of silly season. And now we're going ahead and jump on to the final major story of today's episode as we're talking about Chase Briscoe. As it was finally officially confirmed yesterday that Chase Briscoe will be driving the 19 for Joe Gibbs Racing in 2025. It is a multi-year deal according to Bob Pockrass and Joe Gibbs Racing. The crew chief for Chase Briscoe is going to be James Small. James Small is going to be sticking around with the number 19 team in 2025. The big shock to me is that Bass Pro Shops is going to be the sponsor for Chase Briscoe for majority of races in 2025. According to Bob Pockrass, they've had conversations, that being Joe Gibbs Racing, about Mahinder potentially coming on and being a sponsor for select races, but Bass Pro Shops is going to be the most likely sponsor. This is a really, really great move in my opinion. This obviously got leaked last week, and what's really funny is during the press conference, Chris Bell's actually finally got to leak the official announcement, and he finally got to reveal, which I thought was really, really funny, and it was a really good touch. There was talk about dirt as well. From what I understand, it's unclear if he's going to get a chance to run any dirt racing going forward, and Joe even revealed that as well. Now, why was Chase Briscoe chosen? According to Joe, they wanted someone to come in there who could instantly win. And a lot of people are going to say, well, why was Chase Briscoe the guy to go with? Because he hasn't really won a lot in Cup. And you're right. There's no denying that. But Chase Briscoe has not been in top-tier equipment in recent years. He's been the best driver at Stewart-Haas Racing outside of Kevin Harvick the last 2 years. He won at Phoenix back in 2022. He has the second-best average finish just behind Kevin Harvick. He's got the most top 10s this season so far at Stewart-Haas Racing. He's coming off of finishing runner-up this past weekend at New Hampshire Motor Speedway and has been generally extremely impressive throughout 2024. And he's a championship contender, not championship contender, but he's a playoff contender and has a chance to make the playoffs this season. What is shocking to me is Bass Pro Shops is sticking around. I was not expecting that. Bass Pro Shops, to me, we all thought was leaving them, or at least going to be cutting back a lot of their ties with JJR if Mark Truex Jr. retiring. We do have to remember that Mark Truex Jr. is sticking around in an ambassador role and will run select races likely with 20 through 11 and also potentially with JJR and Xfinity. That's probably why they're sticking around. And Chase Briscoe also revealed during the press conference that he's also a big fan of Bass Pro Fishing as well, which I thought was really, really funny to hear. As for Chase Briscoe getting the 19th seed, why not the 18th seed? Joe Gibbs says right now they're not planning as of now to bring back the number 18 at the point, but they could bring it back in the future for somebody else. Basically, the number 54 team that Ty Gibbs is currently running right now, Ty Gibbs driving, is the former 18 organization. And the other big question is, what other teams was Chase Briscoe talking to? Well, he actually was talking to 2 organizations, the Wood Brothers and Team Penske. We know that Harrison Burton is expected to be out of the Wood Brothers at the end of the season. We just talked about it a second ago. But Josh Berry is most likely going to end up getting that seat, or Josh Berry could end up at Front Row Motorsports next season. We do know that the Wood Brothers are expected to get a new driver in that seat as John Wood has taken over ownership and basically taken over leadership rights at the team. And Penske's interesting. We know that Austin most recently just won, but we could have seen Austin move back to the 21 car, and we could have seen Chase Briscoe in the 2 car. But he wanted to go somewhere where he could win, and he also revealed that this deal had been signed all the way back at Sonoma. Discussions had happened the day that Ross Racing announced their closure, and they started having conversations then. Chase Briscoe, in my opinion, was really the best free agent that they could have gotten at this point. Think about who was available. They could have gotten Kyle Busch back over there, but Kyle Busch has been struggling a little bit, and he's under contract right now. And I think that Chase Briscoe at this point is a little bit better, though Kyle Busch is a greater driver historically. I think that Chase Briscoe really was the best driver they could have gotten. There was talk of Noah Gragson going over there, but Noah Gragson would not have been able to gel. Twitter really doesn't like them, and Noah Gragson's linked the front row and teams like, of course, Richard Childress Racing. And then, of course, Eric Jones was linked. But then he had Chandler Smith as well, and Eric Almirola was mentioned for the seat at one point, but those 2 drivers are not going to be in the seat next year. As for what this leaves for Chase Briscoe and what are my expectations for him going into next season, well, I think Chase Briscoe next year, he is going to win 2 to 3 races, and I think he is going to have an opportunity to make the championship 4. He's good at a lot of the shorter ovals, and the Joe Gibbs Racing team has been really good at those types of tracks. Now, obviously, a lot of people are questioning James Small being the crew chief for this team, and I get that and understand that, and that's fully understandable. But I think Chase Briscoe has earned this right and opportunity to come over to Joe Gibbs Racing, and I'm glad they're bringing someone in that really doesn't have to worry about sponsorship. He's basically inheriting the 19 car, and I think he was the perfect candidate and the perfect choice to go with. So I'm really excited that he will get the chance and opportunity to drive for Joe Gibbs Racing next year. I think he's going to do an excellent job next season. I really am looking forward to see he's getting the chance and opportunity. And like I said, I do think that Chase Briscoe will do a very good and strong job next year at JGR. I think he wins 2 to 3 races, and I think he has a good chance and opportunity to make the championship 4 next year. He'll, of course, be going up against guys like Kyle Larson, Kyle Busch if they get better, of course, Chase Elliott and Bubba Wallace, among other drivers, and of course, will be teammates or drivers like Denny Hamlin. We don't know how much longer Denny Hamlin's going to be in Cup. As for a guy like Chandler Smith, I think he eventually replaces Denny Hamlin personally. But going back to Chase Briscoe, this is a fantastic move for Joe Gibbs Racing, and I do think that he'll do an excellent and great job. And I'm very happy to see he will get the chance and opportunity to drive for Joe Gibbs Racing starting next year. I think he'll win multiple races and do a fantastic job at JGR starting in 2025. It's a multi-year deal of a couple of years, and we'll see Bass Pro sponsor him for a lot of races next season. So, that is going to today's NASCAR news and motorsports news video. I want to thank you guys for watching. Please subscribe to the channel, notifications on, so if I win a video, it does go live on my channel. Follow me on Twitter, Facebook, and Instagram, and support my Patreon as well. Link is below that, and comment your thoughts below on today's video. What are your expectations for Chase Briscoe at Joe Gibbs Racing? Let me know your thoughts in the comments below. And do you think Josh Berry will end up at the Wood Brothers, and do you think SVG will be full-time in Cup? Let me know your thoughts in the comments below. Later today on the channel, we'll have the Xfinity Series race picks for this weekend at Nashville Super Speedway. Tomorrow, we're going to have the Cup Series race picks for Nashville, and we'll also have the paint scheme video as well. And if any major news breaks throughout the rest of the week, you'll see special breaking news videos here on the channel. So anyways, like I said, I want to thank you guys for watching today's episode, and I'll see you guys next time for more great, awesome NASCAR content and other motorsports content on the channel like this. Take care, everybody.